Have you ever wanted to say something important, but your voice refused to come out? Have you ever stayed quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because fear held your tongue prisoner? It happens more often than we admit. Some people bury their dreams in silence. Some run away from opportunities. And some live their whole lives never truly expressing who they are. But there are others, a rare few, who choose a harder path. They choose to speak even when their voice shakes. They choose to face fear head on, and through that, they discover freedom. Let me ask you, what would your life look like if fear never silenced you again? Today, I'll share a story that may answer that question. A story about a boy, an old man, and the courage to transform silence into strength. Let's try to understand what lesson this story gives us. There was once a boy named Aiden. Aiden was smart, curious, and full of ideas. Inside his mind lived entire worlds of creativity. But to the outside world, he looked quiet, almost invisible. Whenever teachers asked questions, Aiden's heart would beat like a drum. His lips trembled, his throat tightened. And though he knew the answers, silence always won. "Why don't you ever speak?" his classmates whispered. Some laughed, others shrugged. To them, Aiden was simply the shy boy. But deep inside, Aiden wasn't shy. He was trapped by an invisible enemy called anxiety. Every day he carried this heavy silence home, and every night he wished he could break free. One afternoon, after a particularly painful day at school, Aiden wandered to the edge of town and sat beneath a large oak tree. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He whispered to himself, "Why can't I be normal? Why do I always fail to speak?" At that moment, an old man passed by. His hair was silver, his steps slow, but his eyes were filled with kindness. "Why are you so troubled, young one?" he asked softly. Aiden looked away, embarrassed, but something about the man felt safe. I want to speak, but my fear always wins. No matter how much I try, I can't do it." The old man smiled knowingly. "Ah, so you are fighting the battle of the trembling voice." Aiden blinked in surprise. You know this feeling?" The old man nodded. "More than you think. I too once lived in silence. But silence is not peace. It is prison, and prison can be broken." The old man sat down beside Aiden and began to share his wisdom. "Listen carefully, boy. There are 7 keys to unlocking your voice. First key, breathe. When fear rises, your breath becomes shallow. Slow it down, and your heart will follow. Second key, start small. Speak to yourself in the mirror, then to one friend, then a small group. Grow your voice step by step, like a seed becoming a tree. Third key, reframe fear. Fear is not your enemy, it is energy. If your hands shake, let them shake, but still speak. Courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite it. Fourth key, keep a journal. Write down every moment you dare to speak, no matter how small. These victories, written in ink, will remind you how strong you are becoming. Fifth key, tell stories. Don't aim for perfect speeches. People don't want perfection, they want connection. Speak from your heart, and they will listen. Sixth key, Learn from others. Watch great speakers not to copy them, but to see that even they once trembled. If they could grow, so can you. And seventh key, practice daily. Confidence is not built in silence. It is built in practice. Speak every day, even if only to the wind. Aiden listened, his eyes wide, hope flickering inside his chest for the first time in years. The next day, in class, the teacher asked a question. Aiden felt the old fear rise like a wave. His palms sweated. His throat closed. His mind screamed, "Stay silent." But he remembered the old man's words. Courage is not the absence of fear, but speaking while your voice trembles. His hand rose slowly, almost against his will. At first, his voice cracked. The class turned to look. Laughter hovered in the air, but Aiden pushed forward. And when he finished, silence fell, not because he failed, but because he had finally spoken. Day after day, Aiden practiced. He spoke to the mirror. He whispered to the wind. He read his journal with pride as each page filled with small victories. Each attempt, each trembling word built his confidence brick by brick. Weeks passed. A school event approached. Students were asked to give short speeches. The old Aiden would have run, but this new Aiden stepped forward. The hall was packed. Aiden stood backstage, knees shaking. Fear returned, whispering, "You can't do this." He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. 1, 2, 3. The storm began to calm. He stepped onto the stage. Lights blinded him. The crowd felt enormous. For a moment, silence weighed heavy. Then he remembered the old man's seventh key. Speak every day, even to the wind. Today, the wind is simply a crowd. He opened his mouth and began. His voice trembled at first, but then it grew stronger, clearer, brighter. He spoke from his heart. By the end, the hall erupted in applause. Aiden stood taller than ever before, tears in his eyes. After the event, Aiden rushed to the oak tree to thank the old man. But the tree was empty. Only the man's cane rested against the trunk. The old man was gone. Aiden picked up the cane, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you." He realized now the old man was more than a mentor. He was a guide sent to awaken his voice. And from that day forward, he spoke, not perfectly, but courageously. And in his courage, he found freedom. So what about you? How long will you let fear silence your voice? Remember this, anxiety is not a curse. It is a teacher. It tells you where your courage must grow. Speak, even if your voice trembles. Speak, even if your words stumble. Speak, because silence steals your power, but your voice can change the world. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs courage today. And if you want more stories that inspire, motivate, and also help you build confidence in English, subscribe to Oria Pixel. Together, let's turn anxiety into confidence and silence into power.